There it is. Start the recording now. So folks, feel free. Please, if it's okay, if you want to turn your cameras off while we're recording, this isn't going to be shared. This is only going to be shared to folks who maybe have missed it, and within our folks, our membership base, so they can check it out as well. All right, so folks, I think we're all here to talk about Project 2025. We have a great amount of speakers here to be able to do a deep dive. I think there's a lot of us. Let me make sure I grab all my stuff. There's a lot of us here who have possibly heard of it. There's more like I said, this is a great conversation of the times right now in politics, and some of us have maybe done a deep dive into exactly what it is, and some of us haven't. But we're here to educate everybody on what the actual policy is. And it's a policy that can hurt veterans. That's the big thing here today, folks. It's a long slew of Project 2025 is a long slew of ideas and recommendations from a conservative think tank called the Heritage Foundation, along with their partners who put together policy ideas for an upcoming conservative administration on the federal level. Not to say that any of these policies are brand new or haven't been tried to be implemented before, but a lot of these stuff are things that we should really understand who's putting forth and understand how it's going to affect our day to day. And today, especially because we're all veterans, we're going to take a deep dive into exactly how Project 2025 is going to affect all of us as veterans and even veteran families, right? And it won't just be, bread and butter VA issues, which we're going to take a deep dive into, but it can be other things like elections. It can be other things like immigration. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later to lay the land out. But I do want to stop here for a quick moment to also say that we do have storytelling tonight. And so if there's going to be sensitive topics that are going to be coming around, please, we're going to use trigger warnings to ensure that, if something comes up, that you can step out of the room for a quick second whilst maybe somebody tells a story. But sensitive information will be talked about today. If someone has a problem with recording it, please, I could turn the turn off button if you wanted to share your story a little bit later, and then I can turn it right back on after the story's finished. We want to be sensitive to any stories that are told today. Before I start, are there any questions? No. Okay. Well, let me get all my stuff all in order because I am a little out of sorts. Let me grab my stuff and then we can get rocking and rolling. Okay. All right. And sorry, folks, I do have a little one in the background, two young ones. So if we hear yelling or crying in the background, I'll try to go to mute as soon as possible. All right, folks. So let's lay the land out pretty easily and talk about exactly what's going on here, folks. Okay, so Project 2025. Project 2025 uh, is a book of recommendations, like I said. We're going to be putting links in the chat for certain things. And just to let you know, if there's something that might be questionable or you didn't catch, please put it in the chat and somebody will be able to answer it. And at the very end of everything, we're going to send a resource links with a lot of the things that we talked about as well, and some good resources, okay? So the book of recommendations itself, you can go on the actual website and you can check it out. It was for sale. Apparently it's sold out, but you can catch a PDF version on the internet, on the actual website. Pretty easy to find if you Google it. But what it is a policy crafted by conservative scholars, former elected officials, economists, and former presidential officials as well. So these are folks that have been in previous administrations, so that have had a hand in federal government. And the Heritage Foundation, who's the people who did write this, have a long policy since 1973 of recommending policies like this. Started with the Reagan administration and since then has been published. And the original document that this is attached to, or the policy this is attached to, it's called the Mandate for Leadership: Principles to Limited Government, Expanded Freedom, and Strengthening America. Sounds great, sounds wonderful, but as you see when we go into a deep dive, it is going to be things that actually do the opposite, that limit the ability to help, especially veterans. I'm going to give you guys a quick little poll that's I found wildly interesting, just to kind of lay the land before we jump into our first guest speaker. There was a polling done, and this was actually this slide I think was used, and I'm gonna quote my sources, Quentin, here on the wonderful resources that Congressman Jared Huffman has used in his task force, and we'll hear more about that a little bit later. But a polling was done that by Upswing Research and Strategy, out of 1,200 likely voters nationwide, when folks were initially asked about Project 2025, there was about 13% favorability and 15% negative favorability against it. When they were informed about the actual description, which was a black and white description of it, the description then it brought the approval rate to 46%, the disapproval rate to 30%. Here's the fun part. As soon as they understood the policy, the percentages changed. It went from 25% approval to 66% disapproval. That's what we're aiming to do here, folks, is to enlighten everyone as much as possible so you can understand what policy looks like. And so 2025, Project 2025 is going to affect veterans like you through the VA, the Veterans Health Administration, the Veterans Benefit Administration, federal employment, HUD by ending the Housing First Initiative, Social Security privatization, election, and immigration. Again, I'm going to go into this a little bit in detail to see how this directly affects veterans. But with that, I will go ahead and introduce a great partner of Common Defense, Suzanne Gordon, who has been just a great ally. I met Suzanne while doing some policy work and finding out that she is an expert on veteran healthcare. She's an award-winning journalist and author. She's written for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, the Nation. It can go on and on, folks. I can't do any service by describing Suzanne. She's going to essentially give you all her expertise here on what we're talking about, and you'll be able to see for yourself, folks. My good friend, Suzanne Gordon from the Veteran Healthcare Policy Institute. Suzanne?
Yeah, and thank you so much, Oscar. And when I'm finished, I'll put in the chat VHPI's website where you could check out, and we've done a very thorough analysis, Project 2025, and I'm this is kind of like Project 2025 speed dating, and because I'm just going to really hit the highlights of what it proposes to do, and we can talk more in the chat, and also I can put my email and so forth, but I've read a lot of it. I mean, it's a 920-page tome that deals with every department in the federal government, one of which is the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is the second largest agency in the federal government, and runs the Veterans Health Administration, which is the nation's largest and only publicly funded, fully integrated comprehensive health system, and the Veterans Benefits Administration, which is the largest benefits provider in the country. And so I think that what we have to understand here, I mean, people, if you've read in the media and listened to the media, they've looked at the Department of Justice, the EPA, the this, the that, but very little attention has been paid to what it would do to the Department of Veterans Affairs and the impact it would have on veterans. And let me just say that Project 2025 represents the most significant and dangerous assault on veterans in decades, or proposal, battle. I'm not a veteran, so I don't know battlefield terms, but it's a battle action plan for a significant assault on veterans healthcare, on veterans compensation, on veterans benefits, etc. It has a detailed plan for how to attack the healthcare and benefits that veterans receive. The Trump has, because Project 2025 is very unpopular when people learn about it, as Oscar said, has tried to distance himself from it. J.D. Vance has tried to distance himself from it, but make no mistake about it, this is a plan for a second Trump administration designed by people with the consent of the candidates. And Vance himself, who's a veteran and should know better, but sadly doesn't, has said that he wants to privatize the VA and blames any delays in care in the VA on a bunch of bad apples, like our friend Tamir here, a very well-known bad apple, who's a dedicated pharmacist at the VA's healthcare system and a Marine veteran. And of course, many of these bad apples that they're attacking and that Trump attacks as sadists are veterans themselves. About 100,000 veterans work for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And you know, the thing I want to add to what Oscar told you is this is not just like a battle plan and a detailed policy plan. They're out there recruiting people to put this plan into action on day one of a new conservative, you know, administration, which is, I think, a little bit of a difference from other proposals that they have made, the Heritage Foundation, for other administrations. I want to briefly, and briefly is the operative term here, outline what Project 2025 would mean for veterans, their families, and their communities. And let me add that no matter what folks think of the VA, you know, whether you love it or hate it, the Veterans Benefit Administration and Veterans Health Administration, millions of veterans and their communities depend on the VA healthcare and benefits. And these, obviously, the VBA and VHA could be improved, and there are many plans to do that. But the Project 2025 plans are not about improving VA services or benefits. It's about curtailing them and eliminating them, and that's not the way you fix any problems in a system or a relationship or whatever, or an organization. So the first flank of the assault that Project 2025 proposes is an attack on the Veterans Benefits Administration and on the kinds of compensation that veterans receive for service-connected disabilities. And what the Project 2025, and the language is very vague, but what it proposes is that they would reconsider what conditions should be compensated for and not compensated for. And this is like super important because even the language is vague, but it's kind of code. And we learn what the code refers to when we look at people who helped design the code, like former VA Secretary Robert Wilkie, Daniel Gade, who's a veteran who is a commissioner of the Department of Veterans Services in Virginia. And they have made clear that they believe that veterans should be compensated only for what they consider to be very static, quote unquote, very visible and very severe, mostly battlefield injuries like amputations, burns, traumatic brain injury, and spinal cord injury. They consider the invisible wounds of war, or not combat, but the invisible wounds of military service, like chronic pain, PTSD, mental health conditions, burn pit related or toxic exposure related conditions, military sexual trauma, to not be really real. Gade and Wilkie have referred to them as sort of like a bad, PTSD is like a bad morning, or, you know, the sort of veteran, literally they say this, you know, the veteran equivalent of a bad hair day. And if these conditions are no longer to be considered service-related conditions for which veterans receive compensation, veterans stand to lose thousands of dollars a year. This is like thousands of dollars a year. I mean, people get compensated, you know, for 30, 40, I don't know what the top level is. And that will impact people's lives very seriously. We'll discuss more of this in a minute. I mean, Julian will talk about this, but to save money, the Project 2025 agenda would also hire staff to scour the rolls of veterans for what service-connected conditions they currently are being compensated for and what they get health care for. And remember, it's very important to remember that if you have a service-related condition, that's your ticket, not just compensation, but to health care from the Veterans Health Administration. So they're going to go and they're going to call you up and say, you know, Joe, how you feeling today? And how's that pain? And how's your PTSD? And how's your this? And how's your that? And if you're feeling better, you know, today, or if you're doing a little bit better, they may cut you off. And it's really interesting because they interpret, the architects of Project 2025 interpret these conditions, these chronic conditions, right, as things that you can kind of make go away forever. And, you know, but what we know about these conditions, whether it's chronic pain or PTSD or traumatic brain injury or burn pit related asthma or bronchial problems, is that these conditions wax and wane. You have good days and you have bad days. And you can also have terrible days that lead to terrible years. And if you are not able to get treatment from the VA to deal with these conditions, right? You can spiral, you can go into a downward spiral that will lead, you know, to homelessness, loss of employment, loss of marriages, estranged children. I mean, how many vets do we know who have experienced all of this? These are invisible, right? These are supposed to be, you know, the bad hair day. They shatter lives as much as shrapnel shatters a leg or an arm or whatever. They disfigure lives as much as burns disfigure, you know, your body. And make no mistake about it. They view veterans who have these conditions as scammers, fraudsters. They claim, and this is their wording, not mine, that they're playing at disability, and the VA is like a, you know, indulgent parent rewarding them for being, you know, faking being sick. You know, and so they would cut people off for these issues. They would also rely on more contractors at the VBA to deliver, they would have more contractors deliver, they would hire more contractors and not rely on permanent, very well-trained staff to rate disabilities, which would lead to more delays. And they would send more vets to private contractors for the compensation and pension exams, whose information raters rely on for making decisions about whether your claim will be honored. When it comes to healthcare, so that's the VBA side, right? When it comes from the VHA side, the Veterans Health Administration side, Project 2025 would propose outsourcing more veterans care than is already done, and it's like already practically 60% is being outsourced to private sector providers who have little or no experience and refuse to get that experience to take care of nation's veterans who have very complex and perplexing conditions that you kind of need to have expertise on to treat. Another extremely important thing that they would do is they would to save money, they propose only treating your service-connected disability and not any other healthcare problems you have. So what does that mean concretely? It means that if you're an amputee and you got, okay, it's pretty clear, you got your leg blown off in Iraq or wherever, they would treat the amputation, but not the diabetes that you get later in life as a result of aging, which of course is going to impact a little bit, maybe your amputation, right? They would no longer treat that. You'd have to go outside the VA. So that means you would have to have insurance, private insurance, to treat that condition. If you're a female vet and you hurt your knee jumping out of a helicopter or something, and they take care of your knee, but if you got breast cancer later, you would not be treated because they wouldn't consider that service connected. This is unconscionable, unethical, clinically contraindicated medical practice. It's hard to say, dividing the vet between a service connected and a non-service connected condition. It would take us all the way back to the pre-1994 VA, where veterans had a lot of problems, and we have resolved that and created a wonderful healthcare system that would demolish all of that. And the final thing I want to mention is that they would also try to impose a new kind of workload on the doctors, nurses, psychologists, et cetera, who take care of you inside the VA. And they want to use the same sort of number of patients that people see in a day as people in the military health system see. This might sound perfectly fine to people, but think about it, folks. People who are in the military health system are younger and healthier than people who are veterans, because they can't be in the military if they're not, and they get medically discharged and become veterans. So the veterans who now have 30 minutes, an hour with their doctor or primary care provider would have what I have as a non-veteran in the private sector, which is like a 10-minute visit where I get to choose one problem that I talk about, and vets have 16 problems or 10 problems and so forth. To summarize, Project 2025 will cost veterans and their families tens of thousands of dollars on which they depend. They will lose comprehensive health care on which they depend. It will lead to more veteran unemployment, more veteran homelessness, more social isolation, and even more veteran suicide. To me, as a non-veteran, it is beyond astonishing that those who claim that we must all honor our nation's sacred duty to care for those who have served their country even hint at denying these veterans the health care and benefits that they were promised, that they have earned, and that they really deserve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne, so much. I appreciate you. There's tons of information. We have questions definitely in the chat that I'm marking, folks, so that when we get to our question and answer portion, I'm going to scroll back to the meeting chat to make sure that all our questions are addressed. Suzanne, I know you brought Julian LaRosa, who's a VHPI journalist as well and a community organizer and a veteran as well. For you to for both of you, since you've worked together, to kind of go over some of the things how things are directly affecting veterans and how it can be impacted for someone like Julian, who's a patient of the VA. So I'll set the stage. I've set the stage there for you both. Please, Julian, the floor is yours, and Suzanne, please, to discuss how some of the things, Suzanne, that you talked about are directly affecting someone like Julian.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main question for Julian is, Julian, you're an Army vet, you're an Iraq vet, and what do these ideas, what do these plans look like to you personally? I mean, what would happen if you couldn't be compensated for? What are the conditions that you're currently compensated for?
I mean, there's a number of things you brought up. Whether it's narrowing down the definitions of what is service-connected disability. Like, I have spinal problems, I have heart conditions that developed in the Army, of PTSD. That's kind of the bulk of where my disability comes from. Obviously, if you start narrowing down PTSD, there's a whole bunch. How many MOSs are in the military that are not combat MOSs, but if you deploy, you get a mortar dropped on, that can be traumatic for a lot of people. Not everybody is on the front lines of combat. And so just almost immediately throwing out the vast majority of the military that have deployed and fought in these wars to say they're ineligible for service. I mean, I was in the infantry, and all my disabilities are service connected. But I mean, I have the benefit, like I have my disability is enough. That's kind of my lifeline that makes sure that I'm able to pay my rent every month when I'm in between kind of seasonal employment. And so looking up like in the US, there's over 35,000 homeless veterans, and that number is going to explode if you decide to start stripping people of their disability payment. And also, if you start stripping them of health care, like how many people need mental health care to just kind of be able to navigate in a civilian life, or kind of stay stable? I know I've had bouts of severe depression that the VA has literally life-saving care. Like I've had the same primary care provider, and you were mentioning this with the time of doctor's appointments, right? Like if you get 10 minutes, you don't have time to build that relationship with your doctor. You don't have time to go through the problems and figure out what's your care plan. What do you need to do? How are you doing? But with the VA, like knowing my doctor for the last like 12 years, meeting her every year, going back, we can kind of update, see how things are going, adjust the plan. And it's been incredibly helpful, like over the last like 5 years. Um, let's see, what else was there?
Well, I guess one of the things is this idea that, you know, they'll call you up and find out how you're doing today, and then you're actually feeling better. I mean, maybe you could talk about how these conditions wax and wane, right? In your case, right?
Yeah, like with back problems, I mean, I've gone in and out of different kinds of treatment. The VA, they'll give physical therapy sometimes, chiropractic sometimes, massages, Tai Chi, kind of all kinds of stuff. Um, but the thing, my problem I've had a lot with the VA is this kind of constant need for evaluation to prove that you're okay. Of like, you have a spinal problem. Like I've had multiple heart failures in the past. And every couple of years they're like, we need you to come back and prove that this condition doesn't exist anymore. And then because they outsource everything, like they don't let the VA just internally evaluate their patients to see how they're doing. It's like I live in Oakland and they're going to send me to San Jose for one appointment, and 2 days later I have to go up to I'm going to Burlingame, or I'm in Oakland, San Francisco. Like they'll send me all over the bay to different appointments for reevaluations, and that's every year. And it's private contractors that don't do the greatest job of notifying you. I've had several times where I find out the day of that I have an appointment across the bay that I can't get to in time, and then they decide they're going to try to pull my benefits away because I didn't make an appointment that I wasn't told about. While like with the VA, usually when I have my annual checkup, they'll schedule me for almost everything. It's just like you get in at like 9, 10 in the morning and you're just there almost all day, just going, doing your checkups. You get like everything. It's a one-stop shop. You can get everything taken care of in one day. You should be able to do that for your reevaluations instead of trying to strip everybody by sending them all over the place.
And and sorry, just to jump in, folks, and we might be preaching to the choir, but Julian, you just said it right now. I think there's so many, and I'll throw in not an actual personal story, but kind of a personal story. My wife works in healthcare, and systems that are privatized are spending tons of millions and trillions of dollars to be able to do what the VA does. What Julian was just saying, hey, there's wraparound services that is critical to veterans, and other institutions are fighting for that to hit certain demographics to be able to give those. And here's something like the VA, like Julian is explaining, hey, in an X amount of time, I'm going to create a rapport. They're going to ask questions. It's going to build out to something else. I think that is super important to have that threatened. Clearly threatens, the day-to-day life for someone like Julian.
Yeah, and most of the time, like you don't necessarily know what kinds of treatment you need either. Like if I
Yeah.
go to my doctor and I have back pain, I don't know what all the services are. That's what the doctor's there for, is they're able to tell me like what's the VA offer. If you have 10 minutes, they're not going to have that opportunity to figure out what are the treatments. They're what they want to just prescribe everybody pills. Like that doesn't work. I mean, I take pills too, but like it's not a one stop. It's not one bit. And you guys know what I'm trying to say there. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
not the same solution for everything, man.
And I just put I mean, I think this is really important because I just put something in the chat where the Commonwealth Foundation just did a study of the US healthcare system that people should read because this is the healthcare system they want to send veterans into.
Yeah.
And we spend $4 trillion to be 10th, to be, last in healthcare equity, last in access to healthcare, bad in healthcare outcomes. I mean, we are spending $4 trillion, over $4 trillion, almost 20% of our GDP, and we rate at the bottom. And that is, I mean, all these people talk about like using taxpayer money conservatively. Well, guys, like, look at this,
Yeah. Well, folks, Suzanne and Julian, thank you so much for your portion. We're definitely going to get into Q&A in a little bit. We wanted to move forward. If there are any questions, again, folks, please, if you do, so instead of forgetting, maybe later, put them in the chat so we can get to them a little bit later in the Q&A section. We want to turn now to Quentin. Quentin DuPuy is a legislative staffer for Congressman Jared Huffman. And the amazing thing about the congressman in his office and everyone in his staff is they are the leads on the Congressional Task Force on Stopping Project 2025. And today, actually, there was a great hearing on the Democratic side of the steering committee exactly talking about this issue today. And I'm going to put the link for that YouTube recording in the chat for folks to save and check it out later. But I'm going to pass the floor for Quentin to talk about more of his work and Congressman Huffman's work and everyone within the task force and everything they've been doing to fight against this policy. Quentin, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody joining this call. And nobody can speak better than the folks on this call to the impact that Project 2025 would have on veterans. Congressman Huffman founded the Stop Project 2025 task force over the summer. We had been tracking the issue for a long time when it was still, a little known product from a right-wing think tank, and we felt that the public needed to understand, that this plan is so much more than that, and to sort of zoom out. Project 2025 is something that we have been explaining as a takeover plan, and it is a plan for the next conservative administration, which could be Trump, but could also, be any future conservative president. And so this is not something that ends in 2025. These are threats that have been around for a long time and that will continue to be things that we need to address and prepare for. So it is frequently described as sort of a collection of conservative policies, but I think that we want to emphasize that this is really a sort of unprecedented plan to gut checks and balances, to pack the government with loyalists who answer only to the president and are forced to take a loyalty test just to work in the government, replacing thousands of civil servants and being able to then enact their far-right agenda. And there are some really terrifying things in there for veterans. There are some terrifying things in there for service members and for every American. And we just want to sort of lay out, what is in there, provide people with resources to understand it, and to serve as a hub for activity. And so we've created a resource center that compiles a collection of materials that I think have been helpful to members of Congress, to congressional leadership, and to our partners such as Common Defense, who've put together some really great materials that break down Project 2025. Happy to answer any additional questions But before I'll end, I'll just flag that, as Oscar mentioned, we had this hearing today. Encourage you to have a look at what was covered there. It was really a moving and sobering look at the impact that Project 2025 would have on Americans. A number of people came in from around the country to testify about the impact that Project 2025 policies have had already on their lives, and that it would have in the future should it come to pass under a conservative administration. So really appreciate the interest in this. I think that together we've been able to really amplify this this story to help people understand just how real and serious the threat is, and also to lay out solutions to the problem, because they've given us the roadmap for how they plan to enact their agenda, and with that we can also use that constructively to build safeguards, to preempt the worst parts of the plan, and to in the future build on our democratic safeguards. So thanks so much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Quentin. One question I have, I know there was tons of resources that you were talking about. Is there anything that we can share with the public that the task force has done?
Yes, I'm happy to drop into the chat a couple things. There are some things in there that are more sort of internal, just for members of Congress, but we've got a lot in there, and I will drop some things into the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, anything maybe that folks can use on their social media to kind of uplift, things like that will be wonderful, because the veterans tend to have a boisterous kind of voice, and we sound off pretty well, and so we want to share with our battle buddies and our communities the things that we're learning. So thanks so much, Quentin. I know it is late out there for you, so we won't keep you on too long. Folks, I wanted to jump in one more time to kind of get a little bit more of a little bit more of additional ways that Project 2025 can affect veterans. So I'm going to read off a couple of things, and again, during the question and answer part, we can go over them. But this isn't just VA stuff. This is, has everyone said so far, this can impact different ways of veterans' life. Federal employment. And how by federal employment, you ask? The Office of Personnel and Management, as September 30, 2021, has reported that the federal government has over 636,000 veterans within its ranks, which comprises about 30% of the total federal government workforce. 337,000 of them, 53%, are disabled vets. 225,000, 35%, or 30 or more, are disabled vets, and then another 87% of them, so 553,000, are veterans with preference. I give you the statistics because, as it was mentioned before, if parts of the federal government during this in this Project 2025 plan tend to politicize positions, for example, like that in the VA, then what we have are the possibilities of hundreds of thousands, or I think the number, and I'm losing the number now, Suzanne, I know you told me a couple times, there can be upwards of 20,000 veterans that lose their jobs right away.
Oh, more than that.
Yeah. See, the politicization of jobs that are supposed to be bipartisan, to be expert level, should not be politicized, and that can happen under policy like this. And as a quick example of that, and again, I can send more research on this, as I will follow up, and we can talk about it in the Q&A, like Schedule F. And Schedule F is that mandate that will take away protections for civil servant in the federal government. The ability to maintain their employment and not for it to be politicized and fired at a whim. HUD, folks, the HUD has the HUD and VA have the Housing First Initiative, which folks might know as a HUD VASH. That has been on the target list for Project 2025, for makers of Project 2025. So that would go. And if folks don't know the brief overlay of the HUD Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, HUD VASH, program combines HUD's Housing Choice Voucher, rental assistance for homeless veterans, with case management and clinical services provided by the Department of VA. So again, now as Julian brought up earlier, now we're talking about veterans who can be taken off this program and now unhoused. Social Security privatization. Social Security should not be privatized because that can be the money that's invested with that can be gambled in short and not safeguarded for our folks who deserve it, who've worked all their lives to be able to collect on it, to be able to use that. And the idea of raising the Social Security limit as well. Elections. Elections, in a quick example, is going to be criminalizing the voting process. So Project 2025 would shift responsibility for prosecuting election-related offenses from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division to the Criminal Division. So, folks, we have now the criminalization of things that happen within our elections. Allowing the government to access state voter rolls as well is something that Project 2025 would like to do. Again, oversight and overreach. The power hold and grab of things that could happen through our elections at the federal government. Folks, this one's near and dear to me. The topic is immigration, and it's immigration, but I'm going to bring it down to a different level. So immigration, obviously, we know is going to be a contentious issue for both parties. The Project 2025 talks about explicit language that addresses removing barriers to conducting mass raids. It rescinds sensitive zones, meaning school zones and churches, can be raided. Expedited removal. This would be the authority, this would be the vehicle that would allow for mass deportation scheme, an end to DACA, and to use our military at our border. Now, I bring that up because there is one sensitive subject that I want to bring to the table. I don't know if folks know here the deported veterans issue. There are veterans who have been deported from our country due to poor policy within the DoD that does not, unfortunately, naturalize citizens. Now, we have 8% of our force is a legal resident. Contrary to what someone might have heard somewhere in the Ethernet of the internet, there are not illegal aliens running to join our ranks to be able to become citizens. You have to become a legal resident first before that happens. Now, we have countless of stories that within Common Defense, one of our caucuses called the Latino Veteran Caucus, which we actually advocate for better policy within this space for naturalization of veterans after their first 180 days, which would probably be after basic training, so that they become naturalized citizens. Because if they're laying down their lives for this country, who better than a citizen? Who better than that to become a citizen? And all these immigration policies would affect them and abroad. And so the last thing we need is now for a further exacerbation of an issue that's already there. And I can talk at length about that, but I won't. So those are kind of the additional areas and the additional places where veterans can be affected or families can be affected. And that's not to talk about some of the issues that Quentin was talking about within today's hearings. Abortion access. That's going to be a huge one that also touches our DoD, that touches our military folks currently, and all the effects that can happen there. It goes on and on and on, folks. As we said at the top of this, please take a deep dive. Look it up. There's PDF. I think I saw Dr. Bob Cho. I think he put a link in the chat inside to be able to get the PDF version as well, so you can educate yourself. I will stop there because I think I'm going to pass it off. Oh, no, I'm going to pass it off to Julian. Julian is going to give us some possible actions. Now that we've heard so much information from Suzanne, from Julian, from Quentin, and myself, Julian can give us some possible actions that we can take.
Yeah, so BHP, we are working on a project right now to try to fight back against Project 2025, particularly to be able to elevate and educate by helping tell these stories, but from veterans. And to try to get them published, get forums to discuss these at length with a broader community. So if you're interested, if you have a story of how what the VA means to you and what Project 2025 poses a threat to it, I'd love to hear from you and help you with like writing an op-ed, help getting your story out there so that the broader public can see how this Project 2025 is waging a war on veterans while they kind of wrap themselves in a flag and say they want to fight for us. They want to strip everybody of all the benefits we've come to need.
Julian, do you want to put your email in the chat?
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. All right, folks. Thanks so much for that, Julian. Yeah, it is important that we work with each other to be able to amplify that stuff. Previous staffer, maybe Quentin might know too, maybe might give a head nod. Those things matter. When you put things on paper, officers read those things. We are constituents in offices, and they will be read. If it flags a certain issue, the member of Congress, I know, and I won't say which one, but I know a member of Congress who will take that, will read it, and let the rest of the staff know, hey, what's going on? I've read this, this LTE or this op-ed, really concerned with what's going on. So it does get read by staff and by the actual congressperson. So it's important that we work together to be able to uplift our voices if we are truly concerned. Thanks for that, Julian. Folks, I think this is the time where we can do some questions and open up the floor. I'm going to, while anyone would like to raise their hand and maybe either offer a story or ask a question to any of our guests, please go ahead and raise your hand. Use that feature, which is probably in the center in the React portion of Zoom. If you look at your Zoom window, if anybody would like to raise their hand and ask any questions, please, by all means. I'm going to look through the chat to see what were some of the questions that were asked before. Let's see.
One thing I'll add while you're
Yeah.
looking through the questions is, I sort of just dive right into what Project 2025 is, but in terms of what the task force has been doing, we have been coordinating a number of subject matter briefings to get members up to speed and to collect resources and to be able to distribute those to our partners. Today, we sort of launched into a more public-facing portion of our work here. We have been hosting floor speeches, which I encourage you to look out for. Today we had the hearing, and then when Congress leaves and everybody goes out into their districts, we have equipped every member of the Democratic caucus with a toolkit to be able to run events like the one that we had today in the Capitol all around the country. And so I would say that's also a really great opportunity for the folks on here to be able to reach out to their members. If you want to encourage them to hold a roundtable or a town hall on Project 2025, there's a real appetite for that in every district, and veterans would make for great storytellers at those. And so, feel free to reach out to your members to express your interest. And we've made sure to equip folks with everything that they need to run really successful events all around the country, and to elevate the stories of constituents. So and then beyond that, we're looking at legislative fixes and executive actions and all the rest of it. But this is a big moment to really keep getting the word out. And the more that people hear about Project 2025 and understand it is so important. And so I also dropped into the chat a link to the Citizens Toolkit, which Indivisible put together in collaboration with us. And that can also provide some, I think, helpful pointers on ways that folks can get involved.
And Quentin, have you focused in some of your briefings and so forth on veterans issues?
Yes, so we have not done one briefing focused specifically just on veterans, but veterans have been a big focus through a number of kind of related sessions. So, we had a session on reproductive health care, which included a significant portion specifically on the impact on service members and veterans access to abortion care, on immigration, as Oscar alluded to. We also touched specifically on the immigration-related challenges for veterans. We would love at some point to be able to coordinate or co-host any session that you may all be interested in doing on veterans. More than happy to do that.
Yeah, we'd love to. I know Common Defense and VHPI would love to work with you on that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Quentin, for the additional information. So looking back to the chat, I see someone who asked about sleep apnea. Is there any way to find out if this is legit? Uh, if that would be something that might be covered. I think that might be the question, if that would be covered as a benefit or, oh, Russell, got your hand up. Go ahead.
So I actually got something in the mail a couple of weeks ago saying that it was through the VA and they wanted to conduct this study with a number of veterans. Call this number. They did say they'd give me $200 for taking the class or the sessions. I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, sure, why not? If it makes it better, and I'm not getting enough sleep anyway. But now listening to this, I'm thinking, I wonder if it was really coming through the VA or if it was something that somebody else got the information on me and sent it over. And they did ask questions, and I was candid with them, but I don't think I said anything that would affect my status. But gee, now I would have a whole different conversation. I mean, $200 is not that much money.
Yeah.
But so how would I find out if that actually was something
Yeah,
that they said?
I'm sorry, your name is,
Russell, we got
Russell
Russell.
Wood.
I just put my email in the chat. I suspect that it's legit. The VA is the second after the National Institute of Health, and we haven't even discussed the impact that these kind of privatization moves would have on VA research and teaching. But it's the second largest research powerhouse in the country, so they do research like this. And they do it on veterans and make it available to, the rest. It's not proprietary, the rest of the world, really world. And I would suspect that it's legit. If you were getting it from a private company, I mean, do me a favor, Russell, send me what you got.
I'll scan and send you what they sent me to your email.
Yeah, please. And then I can help you figure that out kind of offline. But that's a very good question. And, I mean, I didn't even mention, the claim sharks that are preying on veterans, these private companies, to get them to pay them lots of money to process their claims. It's all illegal, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to read the VHPI analysis, we go into that a lot. I mean, we're really only scratching the surface here. But
Yeah, and to add to that, Suzanne, because you were just talking about predatory things, excuse me, Project 2025 is looking to do away with the Federal Credit Protection Bureau.
Right.
To exactly that, right? That exactly thing, the predatory lending.
Yeah.
The next question I got in here says, I got it from Tamir. Tamir is a good friend of ours. Tamir was asking, what would Schedule F executive appointees look like in conjunction with Project 2025 in a general and specific way, and in general and specifically affect VHA? So Tamir, to give you a kind of I know we're running short on time, but to kind of give you the quick answer-ish on that, is that, for example, under Schedule F, agencies like the Department of Veterans Affairs could unilaterally reclassify huge number of their employees into a new category with fewer protections. So taking those protections away, making it easier for a president or political appointees to then fire them without good reason. They could be replaced en masse with partisan loyalists, exponentially increase the number of civil servants hired primarily based on the political allegiance rather than professional qualifications. So instead of, hey, I'm here in this department because of this and we're all in a huge structure, that it all can be wiped away for the sake of, this is too difficult, all of you don't seem like you're loyalists, let's go ahead and get a new fresh batch of folks in here.
Yeah, and also
That's terrifying, Oscar.
That's to say, I don't know. Folks who work in civil service go to work for their federal government. They're not planning to kick it there for about a year and then go ahead and take off. They're there because they tend to be lifers in the federal government because they believe in being able to be that part of the federal government and help. And to be able to wipe that away and kick folks out fire folks in one fell swoop is dangerous.
Well, they also, I mean, and Quentin could maybe speak more to this, but in one of their initial chapters, not the VA chapter, they talk about, renegotiating all union contracts with the federal government they will attack, workers' rights. And this is just across the board, right? So, I mean,
Yeah, it's it's scary, folks. It's definitely scary. I see Russell maybe waving off. He might have to jump off. I do want to be, or are you waving to say something, Russell?
I'm waiting to say something.
Yeah.
I'll be very brief.
I don't know. Go ahead and do it. We're at the 7 o'clock hour, so if folks want to stay on, please go ahead and Russell.
So my wife will retire from the county of Riverside next June.
Hmm.
After working there for 30 years, and she deferred compensation that she should have gotten to get a better union retirement. Is that going away?
At the state level, I think it would be different because state employment
It's
would
the
be different.
county level and it's fully funded,
gotcha.
but based on listening to these assholes that
For policy writers, yes.
that
To
we-
put it nicely.
I was, hey,
Yeah, Russell, why don't we look into that a little? Hey.
hey, military policeman here. If you're an asshole, I'm going to let you know. But
Says the military
Anyway.
police.
but yeah, so I'm certainly concerned about that. And if you talk to my psychologist through the VA, he'll tell you when the guy declared the Second American Revolution had started, he and I went back into therapy. So,
Yeah. Russell, happy to look into that for you. Absolutely.
Okay.
I know we have your information and we'll definitely touch base to be able to do a little bit deeper of dive. Folks,
Final thing, while I have
Go
you,
ahead. Go ahead.
is if anybody's near Glendora, every Tuesday at 8 o'clock, there's a restaurant, and it's been in the news, that holds a breakfast for veterans. We all pay for our own. There's between 50 and highest is 120. We hit about 80 today. And I'm the only one talking on the Harris side. And I'm thinking that they've injected 3 people into the session that are trying to turn that group.
Yeah.
And they're having success. So if there's anybody else in Glendora that can be here on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock, and I've got pictures every week. I take pictures so that if everybody goes, "Are you really getting it?" I can send them to you now. But
That sounds like a great opportunity to talk about this.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
A really good
So,
conversation about policy.
But I don't know who to talk to.
I think it's super important to say to these folks, do you realize, you're going to lose thousands of dollars in compensation? Do you realize you're going to lose benefits? Do you realize you're going to lose healthcare access? Because I don't, think people realize what is going to happen. And I think there's a lot of folks who probably think, oh, Trump just says this stuff, and he just says this, and he just says that. He's not really meaning it. And so the more we can reach veterans in conversations that are not antagonistic, but, help people get what's
Right.
going on.
Yeah.
But no, I think we can get them back, but I can't get them back against 3 people on my own.
Happy to
Yeah.
help you, Russell. We'll definitely, since we have your information, we'll give you a
Well,
lot
I'll
of these
drive
tools.
down and meet with you for breakfast. Where is Glendora? Oscar, you want to go have breakfast on Tuesday?
Sure, as long as I can strap both kids, to me, then we're going down.
Yeah. No, I get the logistics, but
No, and the logistics, Russells, can be that we all do something virtually, or we do something where we get even more folks around your community educated on this issue that can speak on it. That way, hey, it becomes a healthy discussion there.
And maybe if you have an hour, send me something and
Oh,
and
100%.
I can do a Zoom.
100%. That's exactly what we want, Russell. So we'll touch
Okay.
base. Okay, I see Dr. Bob. Just to be cognizant of time, folks, we are 3 minutes past. Want to make sure that we don't go too far over. But Bob, seems like a great conversation, so I don't want to stop it if folks have questions or comments. Dr.
Yeah, absolutely. Russell, I'm actually in the San Fernando Valley, but I've been to Glendora many times, and I'll just bring my Marine Corps Force Recon self over there, plus 5 years in LAPD,
Hoorah.
and bringing that attitude.
And the guy that organized it was Keith Bushy, who he's a Mustang that got promoted up to colonel, and he was the commander for LAPD over in the Valley area.
Okay,
For a
yeah,
number of years.
I'm in a Valley. I did a Valley Bureau going way back, so I went into the LAPD in 1976. I went in Marine Corps in '68. So
Yeah.
Separate
So
Bob.
yeah, I'll try to capture, is your email address over here or contact information for
Yeah,
you?
let me go ahead and put it down.
And are
Fantastic.
you gonna leave this up long enough for us to
Yeah,
or
yeah,
when
I
you get
can,
us
if
the
folks are
chat
throwing off.
window?
Yeah, I'll officially close this in a sec. I want to make sure that I get to a couple veterans who have their hands up and wanted to say
Sure.
something. Our good friend, Chef Basil Kimbrough, who is the chair of the California Democratic Party Veteran Caucus. Chef Basil, floor is yours. Please unmute yourself and say hi.
Can
Oh,
you hear me?
there we go. Now I can hear you.
No, I just wanted to say I'm honored and a pleasure to be here, and I want to attend all of these. I go to 61 million people every day. I own 18 publications. And if any one of you have items, issues, or anything that needs to go out to the state or nationally, send it to me and I'll get it out for you. You're right, the message must be clear. I'm 100% disabled. I'm an MST victim. And one of the things that Kamala has told us that she's definitely going to work with and deal with the mental health section. And I'm a former homeless veteran of 12 years. And so if you have anything that needs to go out to be said, your message, I can do it. Again, I'm just glad to be here. And whatever I can do to help get your message out, I'm your guy. I'm your guy.
Can you put your email in the chat?
He did.
Yes.
And if Chef
Did he
Basil
put
could
it
do
in
it,
the chat?
yeah, well, if you could do it one more time, I think I saw it a little bit back when I scrolled.
Where is it? Which one is it?
In the chat, in the meeting chat. I see a 951 number. He
Oh,
put
Chef Basil,
Yep. Chef.
951. Yeah, I get it. Okay.
Right. And also, so I can close, we're doing the convoy. The California veterans are convoying to Nevada to help Nevada. It's a joint effort. So we can try to take that city there. So all of you are welcome. I'm a master chef, so I can cook any dish and every dish you want. My specialty is creme brulee and macaroons. So I'm your guy.
Thanks so much, Basil. And that's important to have, the vehicle to be able to uplift the things that we want to share as well.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. I appreciate you for that, sir. All right, folks, we are at 7 minutes after. I will do one more call and then I will officially close this out. But for anybody who'd like to stay, I will keep it open a little bit longer. One last call. Any save rounds? Oh, we do have one, Jermaine. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey guys, I just wanted to hop in the conversation here. Real quick, my name is Jermaine Collins. I'm an organizer here with Common Defense. I've been backing up Oscar here, just working behind the scenes, but just wanted to throw it out to everybody who's interested in doing more, fighting the fight, making sure that I know this is a nonpartisan call, but making sure that Project 2025 is not pushed to the forefront. We have just as an organization, a lot of active members who are doing a lot of things across the United States. If you're more interested in getting involved with Common Defense and seeing where you fit in within the organization or want to get more active organizing in your community, please feel free to reach out to me or obviously Oscar, any of our organizers here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email in the chat. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'll get a hold of you this week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jermaine.
Hey, Jermaine, I'm in.
Perfect.
And our entire executive board of the caucus is in. We're in.
Amazing.
And I just want to emphasize that, BHPI, I mean, we're so thrilled to be working with Common Defense, and we'd love to work with your office, Clinton. And also I've put in, we're really keeping up on all this legislation and all this impact. I think we're really the only, kind of group that is really on, aside from Common Defense, that is on top of this VA privatization stuff. And, the Republicans have introduced bills, I call it Project 2024, to try to preempt Project 2025 and really increase this privatization and really attack veterans. And I guess also, I mean, the thing that Common Defense is so great at emphasizing is, veterans aren't just impacted by the VA stuff. I mean, veterans live in the world. they're impacted by climate change, you know, their children, I mean, their communities, they're impacted by, you know, federal employment, et cetera. So I think that that's so important to be working with people that are emphasizing that they don't live in just a little veteran bubble. And it's just, you know, the more we can try to talk to people in a friendly and respectful way and just get them to reflect on, well, maybe this doesn't look so bad to you, but here's what's coming down. So thank you so much, Oscar, for doing this. I can't tell you how much we appreciate your organization and your personal commitment and energy and, you know, just upbeatness, right? It's great.
I appreciate that, Suzanne, and thank you for your partnership. Quentin, thank you for you and all your work, and the congressman for all their work on the issue as well. And we're not done, right? We're not done, folks. We're done maybe tonight. There's still plenty to do. It is 10 past the hour. I want to remind everyone there will be a follow-up email with all the great resources that Quentin, that Suzanne, that myself, that Julian, that other folks like Chef Basil put in here. All the great things that we've all talked about. We'll send out in a thank you email to everyone. Please, please, please find us everywhere where you can. We're here to fight the good fight with you the rest of the way past this year and onward, right? It doesn't stop here. We want to continue to make sure that poor policy is not affecting our veteran community. Thanks again to everybody who's here. I appreciate you taking out time tonight. Shout out to everybody in the East Coast. Really appreciate you. And everybody have a good night. I'm gonna leave it open for a little bit if anybody wants to chat, but everyone else can take off.
You, Oscar.